I forgot to point out to you earlier in the service that the flowers here in front of us are from our friends at Temple Adath B'nai Israel, who are wishing us a Merry Christmas. And you know their rabbi is a bit of a troublemaker. Love him. He was on my front porch a few days ago, ringing the doorbell, and he had 2 presents in his hands. He said, "These are for you." And I opened the first one, and it's a tiny yarmulke that looks like a Santa Claus hat. It's called a Yarmulke Claus. The other package had a Santa Claus hat. Rather than a pom-pom, the snowball at the end, there is a dreidel. So Yarmulke Claus is going to stop by the Hanukkah celebrations next year at the temple and be well outfitted. For many of us, just 48 hours ago, it all started. Parents and children were awake at an all too early hour and gathered around the tree, ripping open packages at a feverish pace, discovering if their Christmas wishes had been granted. Socks and underwear, books and games, toys and puzzles, there it all was, just waiting to be discovered, just 48 hours ago. About 60 hours ago, this room was packed with nearly 500 in attendance, and we celebrated the coming of the light into the world. The choir sang with such beauty. We celebrated the great meal of Thanksgiving. We soaked in the simplicity of the candlelight just 60 hours ago, give or take. We made it through the maelstrom. We got it all done, or just enough of it done to satisfy. We made it. Congratulations. But wait, it's not done. Christmas 2015 is not yet ready to be consigned to the history books, because Christmas is not only a day, it is also a season. Christmas goes on in our tradition until Epiphany, 12th night. 12 drummers drumming, 11 pipers piping, 10 lords a-leaping, and all the rest. We're not quite finished with Christmas. Wendy has a wonderful tradition of making coffee cakes for our neighbors. Last Thursday, on Christmas Eve morning, she was delivering the coffee cakes and went to our neighbor's house only to find her taking down her Christmas decorations. Our neighbor explained that the family gathering had taken place the weekend before, so there was no need to keep all of the decorations in their place. One of the things that the season of Christmas allows us is a little time to think about what it all means. Christmastide allows us the opportunity to ask the question, what just happened? Why did we do all of that? Frankly, that was a question that was inspiring the writing of the Gospels. When the Gospel writers began putting their stories of Jesus together, they weren't writing pure history. They were writing stories about what they had experienced, what they had encountered, what they had lived through. The Gospels are not pure history. They are highly subjective accounts of what the people had experienced when they came in contact with Jesus. When the Gospel writers were going about their work, at least 2 of them, Matthew and Luke, felt that they needed to say something about where Jesus had come from in order to make sense of the rest of his story. We all know that the bulk of the Gospels, all 4, deal with Jesus as an adult. Mark makes no mention of Jesus' birth. John has a long prologue to his gospel that takes on the subject of the pre-existent Christ, present at creation, the light coming into the world and shattering the darkness. Are the stories of Jesus' birth factual? Did they really happen just that way? Since the stories themselves do not completely agree with each other, it is impossible to know. But I doubt that the purpose of the stories had anything to do with 100% factuality. My hunch is that what happened was that having experienced such an amazing life, such an astounding teacher, such an experience of God's presence, Matthew and Luke concluded that the only way to account for such a remarkable and singularly powerful a life was to begin with an even more remarkable and powerful story of his birth. So in order to point us in the direction they would have us go through the telling of their Jesus story, they began with stories of his birth that would engage us and set the stage for every remarkable thing that was to come. The stories of Jesus' birth are there as parabolic prelude to everything that would come after that. That's why we have Christmas. That's what happens at Christmas. It is not by accident that Advent and Christmas mark the beginning of our liturgical year. The whole year is based on Jesus' life. Little wonder the year begins with preparing for his coming and his birth as the baby of Bethlehem. Advent and Christmas set the stage for everything else that is to follow. Advent and Christmas lead us into the mission and ministry of Jesus. Advent and Christmas lead us to the parables and the teachings and the healings and the challenging of the empire. Advent and Christmas lead us to the betrayal and the arrest and the crucifixion. Advent and Christmas lead us to the empty tomb of Easter and the living Christ beyond. What just happened? We just put the whole cycle in motion again. We just committed ourselves to telling the story of God with us once again. We once again affirmed that we will walk through another year with Jesus, learning the lessons, accepting the challenges, and living the new life he came to pioneer. And if you didn't know that before, you know it now. That's what we're doing here. That's part of what it means to be God's people. What just happened? We just signed on for another year of being God's people. Then there's our gospel lesson for the day. Jesus is 12 years old. Wait a minute. He was just a baby 60 hours ago. Now he's 12. Fall asleep in church and you're going to miss some things. But again, look at the way the story is told. When does the story take place? During the festival of the Passover. Does that remind you of anything? As a young person, Jesus is going to Jerusalem for Passover. As an adult, Jesus will go to Jerusalem for Passover, one from which he will not return. So far in Luke's gospel, everyone else has said something about Jesus. Angels, Mary, Elizabeth, all kinds of people have had something to say about Jesus. Now, for the very first time, Jesus has something to say about himself. Why were you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house? We are transitioning from what others had to say about Jesus to what Jesus has to say for himself. The teachers of Israel were amazed, that's the word Luke uses, at all the lessons Jesus is teaching them. They are only the first. As Luke tells his story of Jesus, many more will be amazed at his teaching because his words had authority. That pops up in about 2 more chapters of Luke. What just happened? Jesus has begun to do what Jesus was sent to do, bring God and humankind into a new relationship. It grows out of God's relationship with the covenant people of Israel, and it is finding new expression in Jesus. That's what's happening. All of that means that we also have more work to do as well. You cannot truly engage with the stories of Jesus and not be challenged to new living, new action. You cannot see Jesus feeding the hungry and not understand that if Jesus did that, you should be doing that too. You cannot hear Jesus' teachings, which challenge the way everyone else seems to be living their lives, and not accept his criticism and a call to a new life for yourself as well. Too many people believe that celebrating Christmas is enough. It's not. We are called to be like old Ebenezer Scrooge, who said, "I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, in the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach." Christmas is the lighting of the fuse. What is supposed to happen next is an explosion of love and justice and joy and peace that resounds throughout the year ahead until we gather next November and light a blue candle and start it all over again. Christmas is the beginning, and only the beginning. Next comes the really interesting part. Carry the light and joy of these days with you. Do not allow them, however, to entrap you. Do not fail to enjoy them, but don't be made hostage by them. Carry their light and their joy with you into the new year, and they will lead you closer and closer to the God of love and light. And that's a pretty good place to be, for now and evermore. Amen.